We are back to break down the penultimate episode of the season, and boy was it a good one. Though as with most episodes of this season it had its fair share of issues, I would say it stands firmly behind episode 2 as my second favorite of the season thus far. We have quite a bit to cover here today, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. I won't go much into this episode's Alicent scenes, as they were most definitely filler content, but all we really get here is further confirmation that she finds herself very lost in life, and suffers from immense guilt, regret, and lack of purpose. Over at Harrenhal, Daemon is suffering from quite a lot of the same feelings. Though thanks to Alice Rivers' meddling, Oscar Tully has become Lord of Riverrun, and thus can finally take action on the front of rallying the other Riverlands houses behind Daemon, this successful development isn't without consequence for our king consort. Though the Riverlords technically swear fealty to House Tully and are supposed to fall in line with any of their decrees, they bluntly refuse to work with Daemon unless he answers for the war crimes he not so subtly encouraged Willem Blackwood to commit against the territories of House Bracken. Though Willem was Daemon's only self-recruited ally in the Riverlands, Daemon finds himself forced to execute him in order to gain the reluctant support of the other Riverlords. The guilt from this decision transitions Daemon into what is likely the culmination of his vision haze. He finds himself sitting on the edge of his bed with Viserys. Unlike last episode, this isn't the young Viserys from early season 1, but the weakened, severely diseased Viserys from that season's tail end. After verbally reflecting on the burden of kingship, he bluntly asks Daemon if he still truly wants the weight of the crown. Having engaged firsthand with the immensely difficult decision-making that kingship requires, perhaps this is the last push Daemon needed to calm his ambitions and return him to Rhaenyra's side. Speaking of reluctant rulers, let's move over to King's Landing. Aegon finds himself in excruciating pain from even trying to do the simplest of tasks, such as walking and getting out of bed. Though Maester Orwyle thinks they should slow down his physical therapy, Larys vehemently disagrees. Though he acknowledges Aegon will never be back to his old self and will be disabled for life, he wants him to gain what strength he is still able to have back as quickly as possible. As we discussed last week, Aemon's regency is not a comfortable place for people like Larys. After all, Aemon is already making moves to increase his brother's vulnerability. Using the riots from last week's episode as an excuse, he banishes the surviving members of Aegon's Kingsguard appointees to the wall for allegedly not handling the situation properly. What's likely really happening here is that Aemon saw this incident as the perfect excuse to decrease the amount of close allies Aegon has at the Red Keep. It's clear that Larys isn't the only small council member worried about Aemond. Ironrod confesses to Larys that, though he found out about Seasmoke's new rider, he's pretty much too nervous to share said information with Aemond, trying to foist it off onto Larys. Larys rejects the foisting, and in turn, nobody relays the information to Aemond. We'll see how well that played out at the end of the episode, but we'll get back to that. Before diving into the core of this episode, Rhaenyra's sowing of the dragon seeds, let's quickly touch upon Rhaena. She and Rhaenyra's children find themselves leaving the Eyrie. If you recall, they're set to board a ship heading over to Pentos, a city-state in the eastern continent of Essos. However, rather than stay with the party, Rhaena dips at the first opportunity. As I predicted last week, she can't bring herself to leave the Vale when she knows she has the potential to claim a dragon of her own here. If she does indeed stick around to claim said dragon and doesn't catch up with the rest of her party before their departure, she'll be defying Rhaenyra's orders to protect her children. Unfortunately, this scene added further fuel to my highly disappointing theory that they're giving Rhaena the role of the book character Nettles, but I won't go off on that tangent again. With all else out of the way, let's dive into the core plot of this episode. We begin the episode right where last week's left off, as Rhaenyra confronts Adam. Though she is initially very harsh toward him, he quickly shows his loyalty to her, transitioning her mood from one of anger to excitement. She realizes that, if Adam can claim a dragon, it means that anyone with Valyrian blood should be able to do so. Interestingly, Adam chooses not to disclose that Corlys was his father, leaving Rhaenyra to assume there must have just been a Targaryen affair in his bloodline's past. When Adam arrives on Dragonstone, Corlys does indeed come visit him, but still refuses to outright acknowledge their relationship. Rather than embrace his bastard son, he hits him with a weak, well done. Though Rhaenyra now knows that bastards with Valyrian blood can claim a dragon, she still wants to stick with those born of noble houses for her search. It isn't until she gets a final push from Mysaria that she entertains the idea of allowing other small folk into the mix. Though the idea to recruit members of other noble houses who might have Targaryen blood as potential dragon riders was Jacaerys' idea originally, he is furious with its evolution into recruiting small folk bastards. Though he does show a bit of disappointing prejudice toward the common folk, he does make a solid point. He's a bastard himself, and no matter what they say outright, everyone in the kingdom knows this. What solidifies the legitimacy of his heirship, however, is that he's a dragon rider. If any bastard with Targaryen blood now has the chance to claim a dragon, what's to stop them from claiming succession? What separates him from them in the hierarchy once Rhaenyra is no longer around to affirm her will? Though Rhaenyra understands her son's plight, she sees no other way forward, and proceeds regardless. And thus, the train of recruitment begins. Rhaenyra assigns Corlys to find a loyal sailor, and he chooses his other bastard son, Alan. Alan is then given a letter from Mysaria, which he delivers to one of his loyal men. This man makes his way into King's Landing disguised as a merchant, and delivers the letter to Rhaenyra's maid, Alinda Massey, who, if you recall, was embedded in King's Landing to garner support for Rhaenyra from the small folk. The message is then spread around the city, letting its residents know that the Black Faction will smuggle any Targaryen bastards living in King's Landing over to Dragonstone, if they are willing to attempt to claim a dragon. Though very reluctant at first, Ulf is peer pressured into going by his compatriots at the bar he frequents. If you recall, he claimed a few episodes back that he's the bastard son of Balon Targaryen, who was the father of Viserys and Daemon. Though he admits he's not sure if said heritage is actually true, the peer pressure is just too strong for him to refuse the call. On the other end of the motivational spectrum is Hugh. We learn that his seriously little daughter, the driving force behind all of his decisions, passed away off screen. Though his wife is very much against him going, not wanting to lose her remaining family member, he ultimately goes anyway. He knows that, if he were to succeed, it would lead to a better life for his wife. During his conversation with her, we learn that his mother was somehow a trueborn Targaryen and a prostitute, a very odd combination. Fellow book readers and I used this hint to infer that she was most likely Saera Targaryen. I won't go too deep into Saera right now, but the basic gist of her story is that after a life of rebelliousness and defiance of her family, she escaped punishment and fled to the city-state of Lys, where she became a very popular prostitute. Her father, King Jaehaerys, from then on refused to acknowledge her as a true member of the family. Hugh admits shame of his mother, and perhaps that's why he moved from Lys to King's Landing. Given that Ulf and Hugh were the only individuals who answered Rhaenyra's call that were given any screen time and development, it was pretty obvious that they would be the ones to claim the two remaining dragons. I wonder if their success has to do with the proximity of their Targaryen DNA. After all, both claim to be direct children of a Targaryen parent, as opposed to Steffon Darklyn, whose Targaryen blood was many generations removed. In my opinion, the way Rhaenyra handled the dragon claiming process was very poor. Rather than have individuals try to claim a dragon one by one, she sent them all out at once. This would obviously overstimulate the dragon's senses, and as we saw play out, cause them to enter a chaotic frenzy of killing and destruction. Perhaps the lack of foresight behind Rhaenyra's decision could partially be blamed on not having the guidance of the dragon tamers. Earlier in the episode, all the members of the Order working for the Black Faction quit. They seem to be Valyrian purists, refusing to allow non-pure-blooded Valyrians to engage with creatures they see as sacred. However, even still, I don't think Rhaenyra was blameless here. She allowed a plethora of innocents to brutally die for the sake of her ambition. Though many had to die for it to work, Rhaenyra's plan was still the success she was looking for, as she now has 3 new dragon riders on her side, Adam, Ulf, and Hugh. This skyrockets her from a 3-against-1 dragon ratio with the Green faction to a 6-against-3 advantage. Without much hesitation, she immediately tries to use her newfound advantage to take out Vhagar, the most powerful Green faction dragon. She sends Ulf flying over King's Landing as bait for Aemond, and this immediately works. Aemond, having intentionally not been informed of any new dragon riders entering the fray, is shocked and enraged, immediately setting off on Vhagar. However, as he flies closer to Dragonstone, Aemond sees the other Black Faction dragons in waiting, and quickly realizes the true nature of the situation, causing him to back down and flee. Though Rhaenyra doesn't get to take out Vhagar, her episode-ending facial expression tells us that she still sees this as a victory. After all, she caused Aemond and Vhagar, the most powerful dragon rider duo, to flee in fear of her. Well, that about does it for this week's breakdown. I can't believe the season is already coming to a close this Sunday. It flew by so quickly and I'm so sad to see it go. If there's anything you think I might have missed or any questions you might have, be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you don't want to miss my breakdown of the season finale, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all next week for the conclusion to Season 2 of House of the Dragon.